Bride arrived at the airport in her wedding dress. 3 days later, security finally discovered the truth. A woman in a full white wedding gown, standing alone at the airport gate, clutching a single suitcase and a bouquet of wilted roses. Security thought she was just another runaway bride dealing with cold feet. But 3 days later, when they finally opened that suitcase and analyzed what was inside, they realized she wasn't running away from her wedding. She was running for her life. What she had discovered about her groom just hours before saying "I do" would expose a secret so devastating that it would change everything anyone thought they knew about their perfect love story. April 23rd, 2018. That was supposed to be the happiest day of 35-year-old Emma Richardson's life. She had spent months planning every detail of her dream wedding. The venue was booked at a beautiful estate in Monroe County, Missouri. The invitations had been sent to over 200 guests. She had purchased not one, but 2 wedding dresses because she couldn't decide which one she loved more. Her fiancé, Michael Bennett, a 51-year-old contractor she had been dating for 7 years, was finally going to make her his wife. Emma was the kind of woman who lit up every room she entered. She loved to sing, spent her weekends making elaborate costumes for local theater productions, and documented her life through video diaries she posted on YouTube. Her family described her as someone who wore her heart on her sleeve, someone who loved deeply and trusted completely. Michael, on the other hand, was quieter, more reserved. He had been married before, 3 times actually, and each marriage had ended in divorce. But Emma didn't see that as a red flag. She saw it as proof that Michael had simply been waiting for the right person. And she believed with every fiber of her being that she was that person. The morning of April 23rd started like any other wedding day. Emma woke up early, her phone already buzzing with messages from bridesmaids and family members asking if she needed anything. Her hair and makeup artists were scheduled to arrive at noon. The ceremony was set for 6 in the evening. Everything was perfectly organized, perfectly planned. But then, around 10 in the morning, Emma received a phone call that would shatter her entire world. It was from a woman she had never met, a woman named Susan, who claimed to be Michael's wife. Not his ex-wife, his current wife. Emma's first reaction was denial. She thought it was a cruel prank, maybe an ex trying to sabotage the wedding out of jealousy. But Susan had details. She knew things about Michael that only someone truly close to him would know. She knew about his daily routines, his favorite foods, the small scar on his left hand from a construction accident. And then Susan said something that made Emma's blood run cold. "I've been married to Michael for 23 years. We have a life together. I had no idea he was engaged to you until the police showed up at my door this morning asking questions about a marriage license." Emma hung up the phone, her hands shaking so violently she could barely hold the device. Her mind raced through every conversation she had ever had with Michael about his past. He had told her he was divorced. He had shown her paperwork that supposedly proved it. He had introduced her to his family, taken her to his house, made plans for their future together. How could any of that be real if he was still married to someone else? She tried calling Michael immediately. The phone rang and rang, but he didn't answer. She called again and again. Nothing. Panic started to set in. Emma grabbed her laptop and started searching for answers. She went through Michael's email account because he had given her the password months ago, claiming he had nothing to hide. What she found in those emails made her realize the man she was about to marry was not who she thought he was at all. There were messages from Susan, talking about their life together, their plans, their marriage. There were financial documents showing joint bank accounts, mortgage payments on a house Emma had never seen, insurance policies listing Susan as the beneficiary. And then she found something even more disturbing, an email thread from just 2 weeks earlier where Michael was discussing his plans to inherit Emma's trust fund once they were married. Emma came from a wealthy family. Her late husband, who had passed away several years before she met Michael, had left her a substantial inheritance. She had never thought much about it because money wasn't what motivated her. But clearly, money was exactly what motivated Michael. The emails revealed that Michael had been planning this for years. He had researched her background, learned about her financial situation, and crafted an entire relationship designed to get access to her wealth. The wedding wasn't about love. It was about money. And once they were married, once he had legal access to her assets, Emma feared what might happen to her. She remembered something Susan had said on the phone. Michael's third wife had died in a car accident. The police had investigated but ruled it accidental. But now, reading these emails, Emma wondered if it really had been an accident at all. She felt sick, she felt terrified, and she knew she couldn't go through with the wedding. But she also knew that simply calling it off might not be enough. If Michael realized she had discovered his secret, if he knew she had seen those emails, what would he do to keep her quiet? Emma made a decision in that moment that would save her life. She wasn't going to confront Michael. She wasn't going to tell anyone what she had found. She was going to disappear. She packed a small suitcase with essentials, grabbed her passport, withdrew as much cash as she could from the ATM, and drove to the nearest airport. She didn't change out of her wedding preparations. She was still wearing the white silk robe she had put on that morning while getting ready. In her panic and fear, she threw her wedding dress into the suitcase along with her documents. She wasn't thinking clearly. She just needed to get away. She needed to be somewhere Michael couldn't find her. When Emma arrived at Kansas City International Airport around 2 in the afternoon, she was a mess. Her hair was half done, her makeup smudged from crying, and she was dragging a suitcase that looked oddly heavy for its size. Security noticed her immediately. A woman in obvious distress, looking like she had just fled her own wedding, trying to buy a one-way ticket to anywhere that had a flight leaving in the next hour. Officer Maria Santos approached her carefully. "Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need assistance?" Emma looked at her with red, swollen eyes and whispered, "I just need to leave. Please, I just need to get on a plane." Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Officer Santos could tell this wasn't a simple case of wedding jitters. There was real fear in Emma's eyes, real terror in the way she kept glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. But Emma refused to explain what was wrong. She refused to give her real name. She tried to purchase a ticket using a different identity, which immediately raised red flags with airport security. They couldn't let her board a flight under false pretenses. They tried to question her, to understand what was happening, but Emma shut down completely. She sat in a corner of the terminal, clutching her suitcase, rocking back and forth, refusing to speak to anyone. Security didn't know what to do with her. They couldn't arrest her for being upset. They couldn't force her to explain herself, so they did the only thing they could. They let her sit there, watching her carefully, waiting to see if she would eventually open up or if someone would come looking for her. Emma sat in that airport for 3 hours, refusing to move, refusing to speak, just staring at the departures board like she was waiting for a specific flight that would never come. Meanwhile, back in Monroe County, Michael Bennett was beginning to panic. The wedding was supposed to start in just a few hours and his bride was missing. Guests were arriving at the venue, the caterers were setting up, the flowers had been delivered, but Emma was nowhere to be found. Michael called her phone dozens of times. He drove to her house, but she wasn't there. He called her family, her friends, everyone he could think of, asking if anyone had seen her. No one had. By 6 in the evening, when the ceremony was supposed to begin, Michael was forced to make an announcement to the guests. Emma had disappeared. The wedding was off. Some guests assumed she had gotten cold feet and run away. Others whispered about the possibility of foul play. Michael played the role of devastated fiancé perfectly. He cried. He begged people to help him find her. He told everyone how much he loved her, how he couldn't imagine life without her. But behind closed doors, Michael was furious. He knew Emma had discovered something. He didn't know what or how, but he knew she had found out about his secret. And he knew he needed to find her before she could expose him. By the evening of April 23rd, Emma was still at the airport. Security had moved her to a private room, hoping she would feel safe enough to talk. She had been there for over 6 hours now, still in her wedding robe, still clutching that suitcase. Officer Santos sat with her, speaking gently, trying to build trust. "You don't have to tell me everything, but I need to know if you're in danger. If someone hurt you or threatened you, we can help." Emma finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "If I go home, he'll kill me." Officer Santos felt her stomach drop. "Who will kill you?" Emma looked up, tears streaming down her face. "My fiancé. I found out he's been lying to me about everything. He's still married. He only wanted me for my money. And I think he might have killed his last wife." Officer Santos immediately contacted the Monroe County Police Department. She gave them Emma's real name, explained the situation, and requested an investigation into Michael Bennett. The police in Monroe County were already aware that Emma was missing. Michael had filed a missing person report just an hour earlier, claiming he was worried about her safety. But now, with Emma's allegations, the case took on a completely different tone. Detectives began looking into Michael's background. What they found was chilling. Michael had been married 4 times, not 3 like he had told Emma. His first 3 marriages had ended in divorce, but his 4th marriage to Susan was still legally active. He had never actually divorced her. He had simply left and started a new life, pretending to be single. When detectives dug deeper into his 3rd wife's death, they found inconsistencies in the original accident report. There had been signs of a struggle in the car. Her injuries weren't entirely consistent with a typical car accident, but at the time, without any evidence of foul play, the case had been closed. Now, with Emma's testimony, detectives started to wonder if they had missed something. They also discovered that Michael had taken out a life insurance policy on Emma just 3 months earlier, listing himself as the sole beneficiary. Emma had signed the paperwork without thinking much of it because Michael had told her it was standard practice for couples planning to get married. But now, in hindsight, it looked like Michael had been planning for Emma's death all along. The realization of how close she had come to becoming his next victim made Emma physically ill. On April 25th, 2 days after Emma fled to the airport, police in Monroe County obtained a warrant to search Michael's property. What they found there would cement their case against him. In his home office, detectives discovered a file cabinet filled with documents related to Emma. There were copies of her financial statements, details about her trust fund, notes about her family's wealth, and printouts of her late husband's obituary with the inheritance amounts circled in red ink. There were also drafts of a will that Michael had clearly planned to have Emma sign after the wedding, one that would leave everything to him in the event of her death. But the most damning evidence was found on Michael's personal computer. There were search histories showing that he had researched how to make a death look like an accident, how long it takes for insurance payouts to process, and even how to avoid suspicion in spousal death investigations. There were also emails between Michael and an unknown contact discussing logistics for, quote, getting rid of a problem, unquote, once the wedding was over. Detectives were building a case not just for fraud and bigamy, but potentially for conspiracy to commit murder. Emma remained at the airport under police protection for 3 full days. She refused to leave, terrified that Michael would find her if she stepped outside. Security allowed her to stay in a private holding area, bringing her food and water, letting her rest on a cot they had set up. She was technically not under arrest, but she wasn't free to go either. She was in a strange limbo, caught between her old life and an uncertain future. On the 3rd day, April 26th, Officer Santos sat down with Emma and explained everything the police had uncovered. Emma listened in stunned silence as she learned just how extensively Michael had deceived her. She had trusted him completely, loved him with everything she had, and the entire relationship had been a lie from the very beginning. How do you process that kind of betrayal? How do you accept that the person you were planning to spend the rest of your life with was actually planning to end your life for money? Emma broke down. She sobbed for hours, mourning not just the loss of her relationship, but the loss of her sense of safety, her ability to trust, her belief that people are fundamentally good. Finally, on April 27th, Exactly 4 days after Emma was supposed to get married, police arrested Michael Bennett. He was charged with bigamy, fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and later, after further investigation, first-degree murder in connection with the death of his third wife. When officers arrived at his home to take him into custody, Michael showed no emotion. He didn't ask about Emma. He didn't ask what evidence they had against him. He simply stood there, stone-faced, as they read him his rights and placed him in handcuffs. During his interrogation, Michael refused to speak without an attorney present. He never confessed. He never showed remorse. He maintained his innocence throughout the entire legal process, claiming that Emma had misunderstood everything, that he had genuinely loved her, that any evidence suggesting otherwise was taken out of context. But the prosecution had more than enough to prove their case. They had the emails, they had the financial documents, they had the search histories. They had witness testimony from Susan, who confirmed that Michael had never divorced her and had been living a double life for 7 years. And they had Emma, who bravely took the stand and testified about everything she had discovered that terrible morning. The trial lasted several weeks. The courtroom was packed every single day with media, curious onlookers, and Emma's family and friends who had come to support her. Emma's testimony was the most powerful moment of the entire trial. She described the relationship she thought she had with Michael, the future she thought they were building together, and the horrifying moment when she realized it was all a carefully constructed lie. She explained how she felt when she read those emails, how her entire sense of reality collapsed in an instant, how she knew with absolute certainty that if she had gone through with the wedding, she would not have survived the honeymoon. She cried on the stand. The jury cried watching her. Even some of the reporters in the gallery were seen wiping away tears. This wasn't just a story about fraud or bigamy. This was a story about a woman who narrowly escaped becoming another statistic, another woman killed by someone who claimed to love her. In July 2022, Michael Bennett was found guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of his third wife, plus additional years for conspiracy to commit murder, bigamy, and fraud. The judge, in delivering the sentence, said something that stayed with everyone in that courtroom. She looked directly at Michael and said, "You are a predator who used love as a weapon. You exploited vulnerable women, manipulated their emotions, and planned their deaths with the cold calculation of someone who sees other human beings as nothing more than financial opportunities. You will spend the rest of your life in prison, and that is exactly where you belong." Michael showed no reaction. He simply stared straight ahead as officers led him out of the courtroom. He has since filed multiple appeals, all of which have been denied. He continues to maintain his innocence, claiming he was wrongly convicted, but no one believes him. The evidence was too overwhelming. The pattern of behavior too clear. Emma, meanwhile, has spent the last few years rebuilding her life. After the trial ended, she moved to a different state, far away from Missouri, far away from any memories of Michael. She changed her name legally, not because she was hiding, but because she wanted a fresh start, a new identity untainted by the trauma of what she had endured. She no longer posts video diaries on YouTube. She no longer makes costumes for theater productions. She lives quietly now, away from the public eye, surrounded by a small circle of trusted friends and family who helped her heal. In a rare interview she gave to a local news station 2 years after the trial, Emma said something that perfectly captures the horror and the hope of her story. She said, "I think about that morning every single day. I think about how close I came to walking down that aisle, to saying I do, to legally binding myself to someone who was planning to kill me. And I think about how one phone call, one moment of clarity, one decision to run instead of confront saved my life. I don't know if I'll ever fully recover from what Michael did to me, but I'm alive. And that's something I will never take for granted." Think about this for a moment. Emma spent 7 years with Michael. 7 years of building a relationship, making plans, believing in a future together. And in those 7 years, she never once suspected that he was still married to someone else. She never once thought that his love might not be real. How many of us have been in relationships where we ignored red flags because we wanted so badly to believe in the fairy tale? How many of us have trusted someone completely, only to discover later that they were hiding something massive? Emma's story is a reminder that sometimes the people we love the most are the ones capable of hurting us the deepest. And sometimes trusting your instincts, listening to that small voice in your head that says something isn't right, can be the difference between life and death. Emma could have ignored Susan's phone call. She could have convinced herself it was a misunderstanding. She could have gone through with the wedding and hoped for the best. But she didn't. She listened to her gut. She did the research. She found the truth. And she ran. Now let me ask you this. If you were in Emma's position, would you have had the courage to run? Would you have been able to walk away from 7 years of your life, from a relationship you had invested everything in, based on a single phone call and some emails? Or would you have tried to confront Michael, tried to work it out, tried to believe there was some reasonable explanation? Emma made the hardest decision of her life that morning. She chose her safety over her heart. She chose survival over sentiment, and that choice saved her life. But not everyone in her situation would have made the same choice. And that's what makes this case so terrifying. Because there are women right now today who are in relationships with men like Michael. Men who are hiding massive secrets. Men who are using love as a tool to exploit and manipulate. Men who are planning something terrible. And those women have no idea. They think they're safe. They think they're loved. They think they're building a future. And they have no clue that the person sleeping next to them every night is their greatest threat. Emma's case also raises important questions about how we protect vulnerable people from predators like Michael. How do we identify these individuals before they can do harm? How do we teach people to recognize the warning signs of manipulation and control? Michael had been married 4 times. He had a pattern of behavior. His 3rd wife had died under suspicious circumstances, and yet he was able to continue operating, to continue finding new victims, to continue planning new crimes. Why wasn't there a system in place to flag him as a potential danger? Why wasn't there more oversight, more investigation, more accountability? These are questions that lawmakers and advocates are still grappling with, because for every Michael Bennett who gets caught, there are dozens more who don't. There are men and women out there right now who are using relationships as a means to commit crimes, to steal money, to hurt people. And until we develop better systems for identifying and stopping them, there will be more victims. More women like Emma who narrowly escape, and tragically, more women who don't escape at all. So here's my final question for you. How does this story make you feel? Does it make you look at your own relationships differently? Does it make you more cautious, more skeptical, more aware of the potential dangers that exist even in spaces where we should feel safest? If you were Emma's friend or family member, would you have noticed anything off about Michael? Would you have questioned his story, his background, his intentions, or would you have been just as fooled as Emma was? These are uncomfortable questions, but they're important ones. Because the reality is, predators like Michael Bennett are experts at deception. They know how to charm, how to manipulate, how to make you believe they're exactly what you've been looking for. And by the time you realize the truth, it's often too late. Emma got lucky. She got that phone call at exactly the right moment. She found those emails before the wedding instead of after. She ran before Michael had a chance to hurt her. But luck shouldn't be the thing that saves people's lives. We need to do better as a society to protect vulnerable individuals from predators who use love as a weapon. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what you think about Emma's story. Tell us if you would have made the same decisions she did. Tell us how you protect yourself and the people you love from situations like this. And if this story affected you, if it made you think or feel something important, hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear Emma's story. Because the more we talk about cases like this, the more aware we become of the dangers that exist. And awareness is the first step toward prevention. Emma Richardson survived. She got her life back. She escaped a man who saw her as nothing more than a paycheck. But not everyone is as fortunate. So let's learn from her story. Let's honor her courage. And let's make sure that we're all looking out for the people we care about, asking the hard questions, trusting our instincts, and never ignoring those red flags that tell us something isn't right. Because sometimes, one decision, one moment of clarity, one choice to trust yourself over someone else can be the thing that saves your life.